Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 275. Today, contributing editor Bob Van Dyke joins Mike and me, and we talk about router bits that don't stay in place, ideal drill press height, table saw blade sharpening, and of course, we talk dovetails. And speaking of dovetails, we also talk about Bob's new e-learning course, Dovetail Bootcamp, which starts November 2nd. If you want more information on that, head on over to finewoodworking.com/e-learning. finewoodworking.com/e-learning. Before we get started, cool little announcement. There's two videos that have posted on the website in the past week or so that I'm really excited about. Podcast listeners will be excited about both of them, I assume, but one of them is featuring Larissa Huff demonstrating her freehand routing technique for lettering and signs. And you heard it here first on the podcast. It blew my mind, and we had Larissa come to our new shop and demonstrate it, and it was quite the education. Also, for any fans of Maloof, back like 30 years ago, Taunton Press did a DVD, or not a DVD, what? Taunton Press did a VHS profile on Sam Maloof, and we decided to put it on the website to stream so members can view the whole hour-long documentary, and non-members can go and watch like a 5-minute preview that is our favorite parts of the documentary, and I think it'll entice you to sign up for an unlimited membership. So head on over to the website. I'll have links to that in the description and in the show notes. Freehand letter routing, Maloof, what more could you want? All right, on with the show after a word from our sponsor. Regardless of your skill level in woodworking or home repair, you want a glue that you can trust. Because a glue that doesn't work can ruin any project in a hurry. Fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp times, to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond for the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit titebond.com, Titebond.com. Hey, Bob.
Come on.
Bob's playing percussion over here on the workbench.
All right, so we're getting started.
Yeah, we're going. So, Bob, you came up with the title Dovetail Bootcamp.
Yes.
Right?
We are going to have calisthenics. We're going to be running, 50-yard dashes, and then we're going to do 5-mile hikes, and then we're going to go to 10-mile hikes. And everyone is going to be just wiped out by the time we even start the class.
And Bob is going to be like running behind them, yelling at them, I dare you to tap out.
Do it. You call that a dovetail? You baby? Yeah, we're going to do that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
So you have a e-learning course or whatever with, is that what we're calling them? E-learning?
That's what
online class, whatever.
That's what I was told. It's e-learning.
E-learning course coming up. And it is when? November?
I believe it starts sometime early November. And I think it's going to be one night a week.
Yeah.
But then you can, from my understanding, which is pretty limited, you can access it, I think, anytime. But it's going out each session is presented once a week, and then you can watch it anytime.
So what all is this covering? So you have done classes in the past about a survey of dovetail techniques.
Well,
is that kind of what it is?
Basically, it's a version of my class at the school. Yes, folks, there are more than 10 different ways to cut dovetails. And that class started out, the original idea of the class was, years ago, was you've been cutting dovetails, having a hard time, and here's a bunch of different things that I have picked up from different instructors over the 25 years, 27 years I've been doing this.
Mhm.
And so it would pick up, a technique that I learned from Chuck Bender, something I learned from Phil Lowe, something I learned from Mike, all different ways of doing stuff coming at the same thing. There are no correct ways of doing it. It's different ways of doing it. That's how it started. And then I found out that no one actually read the description of the class, and the only thing they read was, oh, it's something about dovetails. So they sign up for the class even though they've never cut a dovetail in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So right off the bat, half of what I was going to show them would be a complete waste of time. So how it kind of has morphed now is starting out in cutting dovetails, what's involved in cutting dovetails. And, I watch people make exactly the same mistake all the time.
Yeah.
So it's pointing out that stuff and heading that off,
Mm-hmm.
So that, and you've seen the same, you have the same, how many people do exactly the same thing.
Yep.
And so you tell them, well, okay, so you're going to do this. So don't do this. And this is why. And this is what happens when you do it. So it's really, it starts out that way. And the beginning of it is, talking about the tools that you need, the tools that you don't need, the layout that you don't need, and just the practice, the dovetail calisthenics. That's something that I picked up from Mike, just the, cut, straight lines, straight lines, straight lines. And then doing, going from that straight line cutting, learning how to cut a straight line, and then learning how to pair and pair to a baseline.
Yeah.
You get those two things down, and the rest of it just kind of, it's that. That's all you're doing.
From there. Yeah.
So then it turns into the 5-minute dovetail, which was an idea that I learned from Gary Rogowski years ago. And he did an article. I actually read the article a couple months ago for this boot camp thing, and just kind of refresh and I was like, yeah, so I don't do it that way or for the same reason, but the whole 5-minute dovetail, it's all muscle memory, and it's all getting into that. So we get into all that, and then we get into, okay, I don't care about how it's cut, I'm doing it all by hand. No, if I can cut a straighter tail with a table saw, because table saws are really good at cutting stuff straight and square, then that's what has to happen on a tail. So that's what I'm going to use. And using a trim router to cut to the baseline on the pins, and using a scroll saw to, get rid of the waste. So all this different machine-assisted stuff. And that, that's basically what the class that I do is, and that's basically what I'm doing in the online thing. I mean, you can't reinvent dovetails. I mean, there's only so many times you can run an article about.
No, there's not.
Actually, there's no limit to the number of times you can run a dovetail article. Yeah.
But so this class would be good for people who have not cut dovetails at all.
It's good for someone who's never cut dovetails. I think it's better for someone who's cut dovetails not successfully.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's better. Because a lot of stuff, it's going to go over their head. If you've never cut a dovetail, then so you might miss a lot. It's like the woodworking 1 class that we do. It's good for beginners. It's a lot better for someone who's been working for a while. Because they're going to, know what a table saw is. They're going to know what a joiner is. They're going to know what, face joining a board actually means.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I like about it but the concept of it, and what a lot of what you do actually is, you're, like you said, you're not saying this is the best way of doing something. You're saying so-and-so has success with this. So-and-so has success with this.
Of course, what I'm showing you is the only correct way. Okay.
No, but
and everything that Mike does is totally wrong.
It's showing you all of the different methods so that somebody can then pick and choose from the one that they like best. They're all methods that work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's what I'm trying to show in all this is what's the important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, couldn't care less about the slope angle or the space. And we talk a little bit about spacing because sometimes people do stuff in spacing that's just completely wrong. But basically it's, you know, stuff that's important for the joint.
Okay, so all right. What's the most important? The transfer?
No,
or straight pins.
The most important thing is cutting up to a line and not beyond the line. Because if you cut up to the line, you're good. If you don't hit the line, then this is on the second half of it. The first half is, it is what it is.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, within, you know, certain parameters, but the first half of it is what it is.
So for the tails,
unless you cut the pins first.
It is what it is.
Whether you cut pins first or tails first.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
And, you know, the people on my right always cut the tails first. I cut both first. You know, sometimes tails, sometimes pins. It kind of depends on what I'm doing.
But either way, your point is whatever you do
on the first
non-critical.
one. Yeah.
Because you're transferring that onto the second board.
And the second one has to match exactly what the first half of it was. And if you have a line, whether it's created with a pencil or a knife, and I usually use a pencil, but you cut up to that line. If you don't hit the line, then the joint is not going to see. And if you go beyond the line, that's what's called a gap. Okay, so it's simple. You lay out the line, you cut up to the line and not beyond it. What could be difficult about that?
Everything.
Piece of cake.
So
the skills,
to fill in the yada yada yadas.
Yeah, the skills are laying it out and transferring it accurately, and then cutting accurately. So if you're cutting, if the pin is not perfectly perpendicular, you're going to have a gap, or it's going to be too tight. If the tail is not square to the face of the board, same thing. It ain't going to work.
Right.
It's really, when it comes down to it, and that common sense, and that's why the 5-minute dovetail, no layout. It's just go through it, cut it, and figure out what's important, you know. And if you don't, you know, if it's not right, if something's not square, it's not going to work. And the first time I cut a dovetail, I remember this basement in New Jersey, a house that we were renting, and I had read Tay Frid's book 100 times, and it's going on about the spacing and about the slope and all this stuff, and I'm like, I got these 2 pieces of pine that were probably like 9 or 10 inches wide, and I was going to cut dovetails in this thing that what I thought was a sharp chisel and a sharp. And I had that big honk, and was right over there across the shop. The bow saw, because Tay Frid and Frank's. So it's got to be what you use. So I still have it. And I'm trying to cut this thing with it. And it was like, but before I even did that, it was 45 minutes of laying out. And I'm laying stuff out and all this. And I was like, so by the time I actually picked up a tool, I had the weight of the world on me.
It was so precious.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whatever happened to that, but it wasn't pretty.
Well, if anyone's interested, I will post a link in the doobly-doo and in the show notes. And that class starts November 2nd.
That's when it is. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like I guess that's probably like the other one that we did. It's a round of videos and then a Q&A or whatever.
I just saw just a little while ago, I think it was on Instagram, I saw the promo that
I just posted it.
That I did. Okay. And yes, I take no responsibility for the Dovetail bootcamp name. Nothing.
Did you see what I wrote?
No, I didn't.
It said Bob Van Dyke approves of most of this message.
Exactly. I shook my head when I saw that. I said, whatever.
Well,
Wow.
You're in a unique position to talk about teaching dovetails for a couple of reasons. You mentioned them both really. One, you run a school where you have really good woodworkers coming in and you pay attention. And
oh, yeah.
One of the great things I really admire about you is that you continue to be open-minded about every technique and method. If someone comes in and does it, yeah, the first thing you say is, well, that's stupid. But then once you try
Blue tape, it turns out, is not stupid. It really was.
So your methods are informed by a lot of smart things introduced by a lot of smart people. So the idea of this is how I do it and you have to do it is a non-issue. And the second thing is you've been teaching dovetails for a really long time, which is a whole lot different than cutting dovetails for a really long time.
Yeah.
Because once you get students at a bench, all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and you say, oh, yeah, I didn't think of it. Anyone doing it that way.
Never crossed my mind.
So your methods are based on the fact you've worked with hundreds, if not thousands of students on cutting dovetails and helping them through their struggles. And you just know, I'm going to tell you this is what you're going to do wrong. Stop.
Exactly. Don't do that.
Yeah, now I'll tell you what to do. And it's not because this is a super hard skill to learn. It's a process.
Yeah.
And that's it, that it's a process and break down the parts.
Yeah.
Break down the parts. Okay, all we're going to do now is we're just going to cut the pins. And this vertical thing, that's what we call pins. And don't care about anything else right now. And all that has to happen is that has to be vertical. Don't worry about the angle. Don't worry about the spacing. That's all aesthetics.
Yeah.
And, within reason. And just cut vertical. Get into the zone.
Yep.
So,
or the zen. I'm not sure which.
And over 6 weeks of concentrating in it, you're gonna get a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope so.
I don't think you'll ever get to the point where you actually look forward to cutting a dovetail, but I think the point is you stop dreading it.
And that's when I started. I mean, I put off cutting dovetails for years. I mean, I was like, locked rabbit joint is perfectly good. That works just fine. I can do it.
Yeah.
And I avoided it and avoided it and avoided it. Yeah, really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure everyone does.
Yep.
Who goes, yeah, I'm going to torture myself today.
I'm actually curious. If you are that person, leave a comment because I bet you there are people who are just, and maybe it's just they're excited to be in the shop and they're cutting dovetails right now. That I get.
Chris Bexford likes cutting dovetails.
Okay. It's a special kind of person.
And I watch him. It's like, you like cutting dovetails.
Well, and it's funny, the methods that everyone uses. But the thing that I see, and I see this in the magazine all the time, and I say this, it's always like, this is the fastest way to do it. There's always the fastest way to do it. And it's kind of my last couple of years, I keep seeing this. I'm like, so is this woodworking stuff so distasteful to you that you need to get it over with that fast? I'm like, if it's that bad, then do something else, because And aside from the fact that you only have one deadline, Christmas morning is it. I mean, other than that, unless you're a professional working at you've got that, and that's all you got to worry about.
I guess so.
There's no Hanukkah morning, is there?
There's 8 of them.
There's 8 of them.
Because you've got
you got a lot of time now.
Yes, you can.
We were going to do that on day number 5.
That's a moving target. All right, let's answer some reader questions, some listener questions. This first one is from Jerry. Can you discuss table saw blade sharpening on one of your podcasts? My question concerns a carbide 10-inch blade that I recently had sharpened for the first time since new. It was an expensive, for me, blade, $130. I noticed upon using it that it's not cutting it as cleanly as when new. Also, the blade guard thing, I would assume the riving knife, that also serves to open the kerf, is too tight for the blade, and the wood has to be pushed harder through the cut. Could the sharpening have thinned the blade? The blade is a thin kerf blade. Any help you can and advice would be appreciated. So nobody sharpens blades more than Bob Van Dyke.
Correct.
And I never sharpen a blade. Okay.
Well, no, you have them sharpened.
So, and that's important because my rule is if you can plug it in, you send it out. And you send it out to a sharpener who does a good job. And you find out who that person is by best is getting to meeting some local cabinet makers, professional shops, and find out where they send their blades out.
Okay.
And it's usually not the local hardware store with some kid down in the basement having at it with a grinder.
I don't think anyone does that anymore.
I hope
even
not.
When I worked in hardware stores in high school in the late 90s, we sent, there was a guy who came around once a week and picked them up.
And you got to find, because I've had over the years, back at Harris and now with Connecticut Valley, I've had 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 different sharpening companies. 2 of them just didn't cut it at all. And one of them was like, "Are you kidding me? You just did this to my dado blade?" The anti-kickback things that they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, they ground them all off. I'm like, okay. But so you got to find a place that's good. And if you can plug it in, you send it out. So that means router bits, table saw blades. I've never had a bandsaw blade successfully done. Michael Fortune told me one time about some place that he sends them to. That's great. But, but I look at those as, I pay $30 to $40 a blade, and it's part of life, and, that's what it costs.
So table saw blade sharpening, I would think at a good place, they're not touching the sides at all, right? They're touching the face of the tooth and maybe the top.
Yeah, I don't think, but so the kerf, theoretically, the kerf is going to get a little bit smaller.
Really?
Because the blade, the front of, you're looking at the tooth front on, it's going to go like this a little bit of a V cut.
Okay.
So but that's so negligible. But the end of that guy's question was the answer. He said, by the way, it's a thin kerf blade. Well, it's a thin kerf blade using probably a standard kerf splitter on the saw. I mean, that's what comes with the saw, is a standard kerf, on a riving knife or a splitter is so if you're using a thin kerf blade, well, yeah, it's not going to work. You've got to use like SawStop will sell you a thin kerf.
Not anymore.
Oh, no?
Mm-mm. They officially
what happened to that? Why was that?
Recommend against thin kerf blades. I think something because it's possibly they can buckle or something during the whole thing.
Oh, should it set off, you mean?
I think so.
How? Because the body's not strong enough.
I think is that right, Ben?
I refuse to weigh in on this one. You're.
But I know a guy who got a saw stop and was disappointed that the riving knife didn't fit a thin curve, so he took it to his little benchtop belt sander and just sanded the thing down enough to get it.
Yeah.
So this guy who has a thin curved blade and the riving knife is really close to that. Yeah, if you do sharpen that, I could see where it's a little bit too fast.
So maybe
you'd
Jerry
you'd have to sharpen it a lot of times to make it to create a kerf that was thinner, noticeably thinner than when it started out.
I don't know.
You know? Part of the question, though, one thing that he said, though, that it wasn't cutting as well as when it was new, was it depends on some blades. Can I say anything?
Sure.
Okay. I mean, the forest blades.
Yeah. Okay.
The forest blades are incredibly good blades.
Yeah.
Very high quality blades. But what I found with them years ago was when they were brand new, they cut unbelievably well. After a while of ripping, they would load up with pitch. And then when they were loaded up with pitch, they're not cutting so well.
And that's when I told Bob, you have to clean your blade.
And you need to clean the blade more. And I read an article somewhere.
Just buy some new one.
I had seen someplace, and this is years ago, I finally saw something that, agreed with exactly what I was saying and gave me the reasons why. And it was some sort of a negative side grind.
It's a very, very slight side relief, which is why it cut so well. But that also meant that if you have a pitch buildup,
it loads up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so that's to me, that's why one of the reasons why, as a crosscut blade, it's fantastic. And, I keep forest blades hidden for when we're cross-cutting heavy stock, or doing a 10-inch shoulder where I want it perfectly crisp. I never rip with it because it's the classic definition of a crosscut blade.
Yeah, I have the Forest. Is it the Forest 2?
Woodworker 2.
Woodworker 2.
It's an excellent blade.
And I use that for both ripping, crosscuts, everything.
Yeah.
But when you're ripping, you're often ripping a ton of stock.
Exactly.
Where putting that big old beefy rip blade in there, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Typically, with the school, typically we're not. It's a little bit different from home shop where you crosscut two crosscuts, make one rip.
Right.
Yeah. We're doing okay. So we're going to be ripping for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's worth it to take the 45 seconds to change blades.
Okay.
Yeah.
SawStop does sell two riving knives. They sell a 2.3 millimeter and a 2 millimeter. So
okay, good to know.
Yeah.
So that's because I have a thin curve riving knife.
Yeah, I remember the SawStop we had in the shop. The old SawStop had two, and when I bought mine, it only came with one. And I don't know.
Oh yeah, mine only came with one.
Yeah, and I thought I looked to see if I could get a thin one as possible. I just didn't.
You have the industrial, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going through. They have different knives for different saws. So there's
I grind them
JSS,
down.
there's the CTS.
That's what I did.
You said it was a friend.
I said it was a guy.
But back to Jerry. It's very possible though that he was just already on the line with his riving knife and a thin curve.
Yeah.
And maybe a heavy-handed sharpening could have taken it over the top.
It could be my imagination, and you could speak to this far more knowledgeably than I can. I've never gotten a sense that a resharpened blade cut as well as the blade right out of the package.
Yeah, personally, I don't know. I can't say one way or the other. I do know that when I was at Harris, they would take blades and send them to the sharpener before they opened the package. I mean, they'd send them the
just
right here, straighten this out,
Huh.
So, but okay. The thing that I know is, just from dealing with 27 years as students is, you do want to send them to the sharpener. Like how many guys have never sharpened a table saw blade? And they go, huh? You can sharpen that? Yeah. So I sharpen blades at the school. I bet you every one of those blades is going out at least twice a year. And it's
heavy use. Yeah,
makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
One thing that I should know is that when we were in Atlanta, we were talking to Freud, and they had a whole list of authorized, if you will, sharpening services. So you should check with the manufacturer of your blade and see if they have authorized services. Like, we're in Connecticut, CT Saw down in Stratford. If you're in Connecticut, you have a Freud, whatever, you go on their website, CT Saw is going to pop up.
Connecticut Saw. That's an abbreviation.
Is that what CT stands for?
As it turns out.
Lived here my whole life almost.
That's because you didn't get you didn't go through the training when you moved to Connecticut.
CT Saw.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So it's like the CT woodworking, I thought, on Instagram.
Yeah,
and I always thought it was
Craig. Yeah,
and you said, and you told no, it's Craig Thibodeau.
Oh, I was mad. Who took that Instagram page?
You know what drives me nuts is early on I'd see a CT woodworking or whatever. I go, we need to get this person writing for us. And it was like, oh, Craig Thibodeau. Oh, come on, we already got him.
Exactly.
He's in our backyard. All right. Let's.
What did you were just about to say before I rudely interrupted you?
I don't know. I'm so used to it. I just soldiered right out there. Probably.
Me too. It's just like, whatever. Sorry about that. It was going to be the secrets of life too. That's what he was going for.
Totally. Let's see. We're gonna skip. That's not a quick one. That's not a quick one. Here's a good one, and I really like this one. This one's from Bob. Not you. My question is around optimum height for a drill press table. Many years ago, I purchased a tall Delta bench top drill press and coupled it with a tall bench that I already had established working in my shop. This really got the table height of the drill press up into the clouds. I got used to it and I never really found anything I couldn't do because it was that height. I recently built a new shop and automatically built a standalone drill press stand at 39 inches tall to match the bench that the drill press was coming off of. In the new shop, it's certainly a familiar height, but I didn't put any thought into whether it should be lower. I'm 5'11" with aging eyes, and I do like the table up close so I can see marking lines and drill bit starters. One drawback I see is that the table is at neck level and any projectiles from a grab spade bit or similar will be aimed at places with a lot of fatty tissue there to avoid impact. So do you ever pay attention to what height you run your drill press table at normally and why? I know when you drill tall objects, the table will be lower, but when drilling average 3/4 and 1.5 inch stock, you do have a best working height for you. I can adjust the height of my new standalone drill station easily enough. So I find this interesting because every time I look at a standalone floor standing drill press, I think the table's too low because I'm with Bob. I have my bench top on a tall bench.
Yeah, I have a bench top drill press and it sits on my bench top, and that's how high it is. It's on the high side. And I do like that for all the reasons he mentioned, where I like being close to work and being able to see it. I think it's probably, I don't know if it's neck height feels too high. Like I can't see anything, but probably chest height.
I'm probably there too. Yeah.
To me, chest height is like perfect.
Kind of about the same as for routing.
Well, yeah, I mean, because routing lots of time. Well, it kind of depends on what you're
Like
doing.
the dovetail
Obviously,
stand is nice and high.
doing like the bat house, yeah, that's putting you at a good height where you're not leaning over.
Right.
When I read that question, it was like, well, yeah, it makes total sense, and I can't say I've ever thought about it, but yeah, I mean, I would, if the drill press was down here, I would do something about that in a heartbeat. But
for a benchtop model, it's not that big of a deal. But do you have floor standing drill presses?
That's the only kind I have. But none of them are. They're all about chest height, roughly. They're certainly not waist height.
Your little guy's floor standing?
Your South Bend? I thought those were bench tops.
No, everything I have is
okay.
I got a new South Bend from Julius. That's a floor, a bench top.
That's
okay.
And I can't wait to put it together. It's going to be a jigsaw puzzle putting it together. But yeah, when I read that question, the first thing that came to my mind was something that's been kind of near and dear to me for years, is grinders, bench grinders. You look at every bench grinder pedestal, the pedestal for a bench, and they've got you down so you are leaning down, almost waist high to grind something.
Mm.
And I'm going, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's like the most uncomfortable, least amount of control you can imagine. Now, I'm sure if you're doing something, it makes sense. But for doing any kind of precision work, woodworking tool type of thing, all of my grinders are on stands. They're on a box, a riser, so that grinder is up probably about chest high, maybe even a hair taller, so that I can be standing off to the side, and it can be on the tool rest, and I'm working. I don't have to bend over, and I have complete total control, And I've never seen that. I see these pedestal grinders, and it's like,
I know Megan Fitzpatrick sits down at hers.
Well, yeah, if they're low, then you have to.
So that makes sense.
But just raise the damn thing up.
Yeah. Well, but if you can sit.
Well, you shouldn't be sitting when you're doing woodworking, because you've been sitting on your butt long enough all week long at your desk in your little cubicle. Stand up and move around.
Thank you, Uncle Bob.
God, I feel like a curmudgeon. But how many students go, I put that piece of wood on your desk? You mean my bench? My desk is in my office. Oh yeah, I meant your bench.
So, but there's no downside to a tall drill press that you can imagine.
No, and the thing about, having something whip around into your fleshy parts, that just comes to best practice. I don't think I ever drill anything at the drill press either without a fence on it to keep it from rotating, or without the workpiece being
clamped. But what about
clamp.
The chuck key?
That's on a big old chain. That ain't going. That ain't hitting my fleshy bits.
A chuck key on a chain is asking for it. To my way of thinking, a chuck key on a chain. That chain gets wrapped up in something, which is easy to do. Chuck key on a rare earth magnet. The rare earth magnet is on the body right on the head, and you throw the key in the general direction of the rare earth magnet, and it holds it.
But you've never left it in there and turned the drill press on?
No, I've never done that.
Oh, come on.
I haven't. I can't say I ever have.
I sure have.
I can't remember doing that. I do have a chain, but it came with the drill press. It's an old Buffalo drill press, and it's this big heavy chain, like a bicycle lock chain with the giant links. But it kind of stretches out. There's almost like, I have a feeling if it were in and it turned on, it would probably literally stop the rotation.
That's how good the chain is.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
chain's not going, and it's short enough too. Where it's
Yeah,
not going
it's
to
not
wrap
gonna
around
wrap
10
around.
times. That
Yeah.
said, I think, not having a chain is probably
All of my tools have rare earth magnets right there, right in front of you, that hold the tools that you need to operate the table saw. 2 rare earth magnets hold the wrench for the brake to adjust the brake. Bandsaw has the Allen key, the everything that I need for that. Drill presses have, for the key, and you just automatically go up to it, and like, if the key is somewhere else, I was like, okay, who doesn't get it? Who's here that doesn't get it? Because it just makes it so much harder.
I have a magnet on mine, but it winds up stuck to any number of places on the drill press.
Doesn't matter.
It
as
might
long
be
as
under the table. It might be on the base. It might be on the top.
get a better magnet. Get a better.
Oh no, it's
Yeah.
The magnet is attached to the actual key.
Oh no! You want the magnet stays on the machine, because otherwise, you stick
that
would stick to the
everywhere.
metal plates in your head and everything else. No, you want the magnet stays on the machine.
You want a really cool magnet story?
Yeah.
So Felder's coming out with flesh sensing technology on their saws. I think it's on their bigger line, like 12-inch blades or
yeah,
16.
it's coming.
industrial
It's coming
stuff,
very
yeah.
soon. Yeah.
And because the physics of it was such a different size, they went with a whole different thing than what SawStop went with. But what they have is like the blade, whatever, I guess it's a trunnion, is held in place with like massive magnets. Like it's magnets are holding this together.
Like electromechanical magnets or something?
Yeah, because then it's like if the blade detects something, it reverses the polarity of the magnets, so it actually shoots them away from each other.
So the blade is not held on a shaft with a nut?
No, I think the whole shaft. I think
the
whole
trunnion drops down.
The whole trunnion is like, I'm sure it's on
something
a guide, but it's like
just drop down into a pile of sawdust in the bottom.
Boom, no, it's
damn.
But it's like magnets are holding it, and I just thought, wow,
Oh my goodness.
That's
John Tetro thought that.
That's
so then
very
I thought,
cool.
so then this happens, the magnet loses its power, and the guy said, no, it reverses polarity.
Wow.
It's like a magnet train.
That's
Mortise and Tenon magazine is a celebration of handcraft and historic furniture making. Published twice per year and without advertisements, it's more like a journal than a magazine. Mortise and Tenon explores period furniture, hand tools, green woodworking, and lots more for experienced and beginning woodworkers alike. Mortise and Tenon highlights the unique beauty of the handmade because timeless craftsmanship is worth celebrating. You can find out more or subscribe at mortiseandtenonmag.com. That's mortiseandtenonmag.com. So I had a smooth move. And it stung a bit because...
Oh, no, that's your headstock.
I got real clever. And this is one of those, okay, you're doing marquetry, practice your glue ups on a practice piece. I did some sand shaded marquetry, rose petals, and there was a little bit of gaps.
Yeah.
It was well within the acceptable range for me.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, I'll just fill that with black epoxy. And when I went to glue everything together, I wanted to glue it to backing veneers, and then that was going to go on the actual neck. But I decided, I'll glue on that marquetry with black tinted epoxy so that it fills any gaps.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, I immediately decided to glue on with yellow glue. And the whole glue up, I knew that this was going to happen. As soon as my black tinted epoxy hit the white wood, on the backside of it. I said, this is going to stain through to the front.
Oh, it actually it came through. Okay,
It went through to the front.
And
and then as I continued the glue up, the yellow glue on the rest of it made everything curl.
Mm-hmm.
And especially considering one layer was epoxy, the others were yellow glue, it did not exhibit the working properties of a usable piece.
Mm-hmm.
As I was gluing it up. I was like, okay, this is not going to be successful. So this morning I pulled it out of the clamps and there was some black glue on the face of the veneer. And I was like, okay, let's see if I can scrape this off. I scrape at it. It's not coming off. I was like, okay, let's take this to the drum sander and let's get a little bit more aggressive. And I kept going until what you see in front of you, which is where it started to get worse because I was getting closer to the black stained wood. But it kind of stinks because I had a really nice piece of marquetry, sand shaded, and it was coming along great. And then that happened.
Still looks cool.
It looks cool.
Yeah.
It does. It is one of those that I posted to Instagram. I said, it has a look and I could see going with it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look as good as it did before.
What would you do differently next time?
I think next time, glue it all up with yellow glue or hide glue or PVA or polyurethane glue, whatever. Be consistent about it. Let the gaps go. Hit it with shellac, then
Pre-finish shellac. Yeah.
Then fill those gaps on the show face with black tinted epoxy specifically put in the spots that need it.
Yeah. And then just scrape it all back.
And then just scrape it back off. Yeah.
If I may.
Yeah, please do.
Hot hide glue is perfect for this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hot hide glue fills any gaps and then when you scrape it, those gaps disappear. Okay. And they just blend in perfectly with the sand shading. And it's definitely the way to go in something like this. The black tinted epoxy, I wouldn't want to use, and yellow glue I wouldn't want to use. But the hot hide glue for this is perfect. And like you said, if you're going to put anything, if you're going to fill afterwards, if you want to fill afterwards, you have to hit it with, seal it with shellac first, and then put your black in. I don't know that I would use black epoxy though.
It's pretty common for inlay, so that's why I was
for gap filling.
Gap filling with inlay.
I can't say I've heard
like for knots and stuff.
Huh?
Or
for knots and knots and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is hot hide, or black. Or black, like asphaltum or that sort of thing, or Golden makes a black filler, and it's all sorts of different black stuff.
Yeah,
but not necessarily as rock hard as and unforgiving as black epoxy.
I think one other area where I went wrong was trying to glue up all of the plies all at once. I think I should have glued up my homemade plywood, if you will, because I do want a black, white, black behind it, so that from the side you see that line. I should have done that standalone with the plies perfectly perpendicular to one another, and then gone with my homemade plywood and then applied the marquetry to it.
And Steve was telling me something. Steve Latta was telling me something a couple months ago. We were talking about this where he and I don't remember now what it was, but he had said, okay, so what he was doing now, that was staying dead flat. And I don't remember if it was the glue. It's got to be the glue. to make that to make the homemade
packet,
plywood.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I'll
now.
ask him.
Yeah, I don't remember. I'll have to ask him too. Yeah, because I totally spaced it out.
But it was a failure, but I know what to do differently, and it proved that the concept artistically worked.
Yeah.
So I'll at least go forward knowing that the next one will be a usable thing. So, yeah.
Well, I've got some pretty funny looking shaded fans and stuff that, so.
What you got, Mike?
Favorite tool of all time and smooth move.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's rough combining both of those in the same sentence. So for when I'm doing Kumiko, I am beveling and bringing all the parts down to final length with a really short, wide Japanese chisel. And that's a chisel I've used for years and years and years and years, to the point where I've only used that chisel for that. It lives in a special place and it stays super, super sharp. The only problem with the chisel is the hollow on the back of the blade. Japanese chisels have a hollow, which makes it easier to sharpen. As you're sharpening the blade, that hollow migrates towards the front edge to the point where I was almost running into it. So two things you can do. On hand planes, what you do is you take a special hammer, you put the blade on a block of wood. This is what Andrew Hunter does. Yeah. And you basically are tapping the soft steel in the center above that hardened thing. And what it does is it creates a convex back, and then you flatten that down and it moves the hollow back. The other thing you can do is just go back to more aggressive diamond stone or sanding film and just sand the back. And Bob, you'd given me some sanding film, which did a really good job because it's super thin. It doesn't curl up. It doesn't round over. And so I was using that. I think it was like a 60 micron sanding film. Yeah. And it was working pretty good. It was moving it back. And I thought, well, let me go ahead and try the hammer thing while I'm at it too. So I just on there, a couple taps of the hammer, nothing catastrophic happened. But then I go back to flattening and I'm looking, and it looked like there was just like a weird little line once I started to bring up the polish. And I thought, is that a weird inclusion in the steel? So I got my loupe, my magnifying glass, and looked, and like there was a crack going from the edge, and it scalloped down to about a 1/4 inch in from the cutting edge. And I thought,
the body actually cracked.
Yeah, that blade just bonk. And I can probably still sharpen this thing. So anyway, I'm heartbroken. So
it's done.
I think so. I mean, you basically could just grind a 1/4 inch off of the front of the blade. I'm guessing back past that scallop.
All the hardening and all is going to be all cattywampus. You can blend it. We can blame it on Andrew.
I think the hardness tends to be good because I've seen Japanese chisels that have been sharpened so far to where the blade is literally only like a 1/2 inch long.
Really?
Yes. And there's like one little tiny oval of a hollow grind left.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think it would be okay, but then you'd have to grind the back all the way to get that hollow back in from the edge. So it's an excuse to buy a new tool. But
I think in this case, we can successfully blame Andrew Hunter for this. Because
he'll just feel bad.
If he hadn't he gave you and I, was it a 20X loop or a 30X loop? Yeah. I think it was a 20X loop.
Oh, you would have never seen it.
Okay. And normally it's a 10X loop. And it was either 20 or 30. I don't remember which it was, but like, oh my God, it was like, what a difference. And if you hadn't used that, you would have been fine. You never would have known it was there. So Andrew?
Anyway, so that was like one of the tools that I actually got a tattoo of was that chisel. So now
it's forever there though. It's with you.
Do I need like the little ribbon going across it? Can it rest in peace?
Just put a Band-Aid across it. It'll be fine.
Bob, do you have an all-time favorite tool of all time for this week, or smooth move or anything?
A smooth move. Probably haven't made any moves in a while, so probably not. But this past weekend with the open house, Isaac at Blackburn Tools, he was showing and demonstrating these little card scraper burnishing tools that were really pretty cool. And I've seen all sorts of burnishing tools that are the they're the end all for burnishers.
Do you struggle with card scraper burnishing?
Exactly. And this was kind of cool. I had seen it somewhere. I had seen a picture of it somewhere, and it's a small rod, probably
maybe 3/16 diameter.
Yeah, maybe about 3/16 diameter, and there were 3. I want to call it not grooves, but kind of profiles ground into it.
Notches.
Yeah, rounded notches, if you will. And there were 3 different, there was small, medium, and large.
No, there were 15 degree, 10 degree, and 5 degree.
Is that what it was?
Small, medium, and large.
Yeah. And I tried it, and the preparation is the same. You have to do the flattening and file the edge and stone the edge and make sure that you have a sharp arris. But turning the burr, which I've watched hundreds and hundreds of students go, and completely turn way, way too much of an angle.
Yes.
And way too hard. They're pushing it like, this is a piece of steel. It's going to take all of my strength and everyone else in the room to do this. And you don't need that much. And I tried this thing, and it was like, yeah, okay, it worked really nicely. And, I don't have a problem burnishing a card scraper. And it's the same thing. When I teach sharpening a card scraper, I tell people, I said, I can show you 10 different ways to do this from 10 different people, and that all works. They all do it differently.
Card scraper bootcamp.
Exactly. Oh my God. That's next. Sneaker camp. But I watched him do this, and then I tried it, and I was like, yeah, all you have to do is hold it level.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 passes across the edge, and it was done. And it's a controlled angle that the burr is at. I bought one.
I bought one too.
And I'm sure buying. I told him, I said, when you get it with the handles and stuff, let me know so that I can tell students exactly where to get them.
Leslie at Heartwood Tools has been selling them for a while, and I've just seen them like.
That's where you can get them.
Yeah, the heartwoodtools.com. But I've just seen everyone on Instagram like slowly just start going like, no, this is legit. This is legit.
Yeah.
And when I went up to Isaac's booth, he had them, but he didn't have them obviously for sale.
Yeah.
And he was just showing them off. And I was like, are you selling any? I was like, I don't want to not buy it from Leslie, but are you selling it? He goes, yeah, I've got some. And I put the $40 in front of his face so fast that he didn't see it. And I was just like standing there talking to him for a while. I was like, can I have it? And he was like, what? Oh, but it was, cause I've been wanting to see it in person. I've been wanting to buy one, honestly, just because a lot of people who I really trust have been raving about them. And so it's just like, yeah, I'll drop $40 on this. And when I got home, it really was, I went to town on a few scrapers, and it was, okay, this is consistent, repeatable. I was always able to get a burr on my scraper, but this was way easier.
Well, that's what I'm looking forward to trying this out on students that, it's one of and like a card scraper for me, when I was trying to figure out how to sharpen a card scraper and all that, this was before videos and before internet and all this stuff. And I'm reading these articles.
Were they iron scrapers?
They were actually made out of rock.
Spring iron.
They were these rocks. Okay.
They're all copper. That's the copper age.
Bronze. It was the Bronze Age. But yes, I mean, it was one of those, nothing worked. And all of a sudden it was like a light switch clicked.
Yeah.
And it was like, and all of a sudden it did work. And over the years, I've, you get better at stuff and all, and it's, you see different people doing stuff. You pick and choose, and there's some stuff that like, okay, that's definitely a help. And I'm looking at stuff as, how can I help students who they're not going to, so they don't have to go through all that frustration of, no, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the block that you did a couple of years ago in the magazine, the training wheels, I call it.
Yeah, and I got that from Brian Boggs.
Yeah, and it works really well. For a while there, I made one of my assistants use it because he just wasn't getting a burr. And I'm like, when you get 20 card scrapers that you're trying to keep up every day,
Well, and the block still applies for prepping.
Yeah.
For the prepping part of it.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I use the block or a joiner push block for flattening the face. And then I just use the block I've used a block of wood for years to stone the edge perpendicular. I've used that forever. That type of thing. But it works. And if I can give a student something and say, here, try this, and it's like, oh, that works great, then, yeah, that's good. Yeah, here's where you buy one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Last question is from Travis. Where'd it go? There it is. While finishing a wall cabinet, I had a scary experience. Luckily, I didn't get hurt. I was routing grooves in the bottom of drawer sides using a 1/4-inch down spiral bit. The down spiral pushes chips back into the wood instead of pulling them out like an up spiral would or a drill bit would. The advantage being that the shearing pushes into the wood and doesn't tear out like straight or up grain bits would. But you have to cut slowly. Anyway, about halfway through routing all of the sides, about board 14 or 24, or 14 of 24, so a lot, the bit poked through the board. Luckily, I was smart enough not to be using my fingers as a featherboard, but even still, it was scary. I look back at the other sides I had cut, and you can see the depth gradually increasing. It was easy enough to fix. I glued a 1/4-inch strip into the sides I had already cut, flushed it, and rerouted. My question is, have you ever seen a router bit climb like that, and what causes it? I would have thought that the down spiral bit would be less likely to climb. If it matters, I had cut these over a couple of days. The first few were done a week earlier, and I was picking up where I left off. My shop is typically pretty hot, garage in Texas during the summer. But if the bit was hot just from the environment, I wouldn't expect the metal to swell, tightening everything. I'm paranoid now about any time I come back to the router and retighten everything. Hopefully it was just a fluke. So, what do y'all think happened here?
I mean, my first inclination, and I've seen this happen, would be that the bit wasn't tightened enough, or there could be junk in the collet. Okay, some whatever, that the collet was dirty in there, so you're not going to get a good secure. The other thing is, if you're trying to take too deep of a cut at once, it's vibrating like crazy, and I've seen bits vibrate out. It gets really exciting. Those are the only, I was thinking, a down cut for something like that doesn't make sense to me. because you're jamming all the sawdust down in there. It's just getting hotter and hotter. And unless you are doing something with a veneer that you have real problems, it's like unnecessary.
Right.
I own a couple down-cut spiral bits. They're all the way in the back of the router bit drawer, so no one uses them, because they are special use only, very special use. That's what do you have any other take on it?
I mean, when you said down cut, what I was thinking, if it's in a router table and was pulling the chips down, but that's the opposite.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like a screw shape where it will literally want to bring itself up into the wood.
Yeah.
I think that the tightness, and Raleigh Johnson mentioned that when you're putting a bit into the collet, you don't shove it all the way down because sometimes it prevents the collet from being able to force its way all the way down.
Right.
So the idea is that you want to pull the bit up like at least like an 1/8 of an inch or
16th to an 1/8,
just so it's off of that bottom. So when you're tightening it, the bit can go down along with the collet. Nothing is keeping the collet going down. That and then the depth of cut.
I think, I didn't think of the, bottoming out. That's that router bit article or that router article I'm doing, talk about that. But yeah, I think that where I've found is taking too aggressive a cut, especially in a harder wood. I thought we were going to get into climb cutting in this one, but this is not a climb cutting situation. So yeah, I would say, and I used to, you always said, that you'd read books and read stuff and goes, tighten the bit firmly. And if you over tighten it, you're going to ruin it. And then I started working with Will Neptune for the years, and I've never seen anyone tighten a router bit so firmly.
Yeah. And if you have the router where you got the little pushy spring-loaded thing, and then you're trying to tighten it with one wrench, it's hard to get really tight. I like to use a pair of wrenches, and then rather than going two-handed, get them pretty close so the V is enough to get one hand on it, and you can squeeze those together and you're not busting your knuckles. Same thing, taking them apart. I sock it down as best as I can. Yeah,
and those routers with the detent, the plastic detent, I know one of them, the detent just destroyed. But a lot of those routers, they also have you can use the second wrench on them.
Yeah.
And that's the way to go. That way you don't have to use that silly thing.
Yeah.
And they work great. Yeah.
I've had a moment where I was pretty sure I saw the bit come up.
Yeah.
And very early in my woodworking. And I used that as well, honey, we have to buy a router because this one's dangerous. But I guarantee you it was the fact that I had the router bit bottomed out, because as that collet tightens, it's grabbing it, and that last little bit of tightening has to pull it down with that bit, or has to pull that bit down with the collet. And I guarantee you that's what I did back then.
I think it's the same thing. It happened to me a long time ago, early on, and I'm pretty sure it's a really beat bit as well.
Yep.
Well, that would do it too. I mean, if you're working with a bit that's really dull, that's the same as trying to take too heavy of a cut all at once. Yeah. You're just stressing everything. Yeah. You can tell from listening to it.
Well, and then also thinking, he's doing a 1/4 inch. Those 1/4 inch bits, a 3 inch or 2.5 inch long 1/4 inch bit. That's a lot of.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of room for that to wiggle around and vibrate if you're taking too heavy of a cut. So it makes me think that in a batching out scenario like this, maybe Travis, check out Bob's router table article where you use cheaters to basically raise the bottom or the spacers. So you set your depth initially and then put 1/4-inch MDF boards or 1/8-inch hardboard, whatever, to use as a new surface to gradually run each piece over, take away one piece, one spacer, then keep running through. So this way, if you're worried about hitting that depth or working your way up to that depth, this is a way of setting that depth. You got it nailed, and then you work your way to it.
You set the final depth, and then on a lot of the router lifts, a lot of the time you can't go back to that final depth. So if you can't lower the bit down, you raise the table up. And you put a couple cheaters under it, and 1/8 of an inch at a time. So you put 3 pieces of 1/8-inch MDF. Take one away, and you keep going. But the other thing you said earlier about the, let's say you're doing a 1/4-inch spiral bit. And how, if you have that thing sticking out too far, there's a lot of deflection on that bit.
Yeah.
And I will take that bit and I will put that bit so that the bit goes all the way down so that when it's tight, the top of the collet is just at the beginning of the flutes. Just so there's no flat part. It's just, and it just right around there.
Right.
And if you stick it out farther than that and you try and take too fast an aggressive cut, it starts to go.
Do they make 1/2-inch shank 1/4-inch bits?
Yeah, I have a bunch of them.
I've never bought one.
Usually like solid carbide.
Yeah, no, I have some.
Like all of my 1/4-inch bits are 1/4-inch shank, which just, they run differently.
Yeah.
Well, any 1/4-inch shank is going to have more chatter compared to the same thing in a 1/2-inch shank. But a 1/2-inch shank is more money, and it depends on the router that you have. I mean, those small 1 horsepower DeWalt routers that we have are great.
Yeah.
But I would never use them as an only router. It's it's a second router because it only takes a 1/4-inch shank.
Yeah.
But most of the stuff you do, you don't really need that 1/2-inch shank.
Right.
Same thing. You don't need that 3 1/4-inch or 3 1/4 horsepower plunge router for 95% of anything you're doing.
Yeah.
It's pointless.
Bob, thank you for coming on and yapping with us. And it's always a pleasure to have you on. And
always a lot of fun.
If anyone is curious about Bob's class, I will have a link in the description and on the show notes.
I actually have the class coming up also.
Oh.
I just realized. Yeah, so I have the hands-on weekend class coming up. I think it's November 5th.
What's your website again?
Schoolofwoodworking.com.
Okay. Head on over.
Yeah.
Cool.
There you go.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Again, thank you to Bob. If you want more information on his e-learning course, please head on over to findwoodworking.com/e-learning and check out his Dovetail bootcamp course, or whatever he wants to call it. Imagine it's Bob's super happy Dovetail hour. Yeah, I like that. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. Send in your questions, comments, and conversation starters to shoptalk@taunton.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us and letting us into your shop. Bye.
One more thing, but I'm not going to say it.
Okay, yeah,
because number one, if it's wrong, I want you to tell me it's wrong on the air.
Well, I was assuming that it was.
No. Let's save it.